Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine podcast. Today, we are going to double click on on a platform and technology that we think is really going to change how advisors provide retirement solutions to customers. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Paul. It's great to be back here.
Yeah, kind of cold. Cold today. I know winter's coming, but it's going to get colder for where one of our guests is. So, Laura, do you want to do the intros?
Happy to do so. Joining us, we have Sheryl O'Connor, Chief Executive Officer and founder of IncomeConductor, and also a 2022 Wealthiest finalist. Congratulations. And based out of the windy city of Chicago, we have Steve Kellar. It's going to be an interesting conversation. Steve and Sheryl have been, partners in crime, we'll say, for a number of years, and they'll tell you more about their partnership and their story. But Steve's practice is focused on retirement income services. So, Sheryl, for the benefit of our listeners, if you could please tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, that would be great.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. And I am CEO of IncomeConductor. And I have two other co-founders, Phil Lubinsky and Tom O'Connor. We started to build the software back in 2014 when Phil approached me. He's been a retail advisor for over 35 years and a retirement income specialist. And what we really sought to do was to create a technology platform that would help clients move into retirement with confidence and have peace of mind throughout retirement. So IncomeConductor is a platform that can be used right from the first meeting with the prospect all the way through the wealth transfer. And it really engages the client in the creation of their plan and then helps the client and the advisor track that plan over the 25, 30 plus years of retirement, where lots of things are going to change. And it gives them the kind of data they need to make decisions upon.
Thanks. And Steve, tell us about your practice.
As you mentioned, I'm focused on retirement income management. I'm an investment advisor too, of course, but everybody does that in my business. So it's important, I feel, for myself and for the clients that I have a specialty that is particularly helpful. And retirement income is one of those niches that I think is much needed. People need to know that, when they come to my office, usually what they're asking is when can I retire? When can I pull the trigger? When can I safely, assume with confidence that now's a good time to retire? So that's my job to begin with. And then after that, there's a lot more work to do in terms of managing their income. I become their paymaster at that point. I'm in charge of their paycheck, and that makes me invaluable. So that's good for me.
Well, could you tell us just a little bit more, maybe put a little more color on the types of type of practice you have? Like, how many clients do you have? What's the typical profile? How do you? So people say, well, Steve, tell us about your. Who are you doing this for? What's the answer?
I would say 2/3 of my practice is retirement income. That encompasses about 60 families. Mm-hmm. That's in terms of the intensity of the services that we provide. That can be a big job. So to have a platform, to have as much automation as possible in terms of watching over the money and what's going on, and also being able to look forward, to the next, what we call as time segmentation that we're talking about, to those future time segments, and monitor their health as well as the current source of income is, you just have to be able to do that. And that's what we do, and that's what we can do. And I don't know of any other platform, and I've seen everything that does this. I've seen everything. I've been doing this for 35 years. So Oh yeah,
Well,
that's why I can do what I want to do for clients, and I get a great deal of satisfaction in being able to do that.
well, I think we want to, we definitely want to return to sort of how your
Mm-hmm.
practices change, how the business changed. But Sheryl, first of all, thanks for coming and helping us at our Retire Tech Forum. I can't believe how fast the time has flown. I mean, Laura, is that like 6 months ago? Is that right?
Nearly.
Wow. And Sheryl, so we are going to do Laura's already working on a really cool next forum event. Wait till you hear about this. So we'll have you come back and talk more. But I guess where is your company? What sort of, just maybe before we kind of dive into the impact, maybe you tell us like kind of what's happened since we talked to you last. You were Wealthy's finalist. We were too. We didn't get the prize. Yeah. Yeah, but what's how's business going in this sort of post? I don't know if is it safe to say post-COVID environment or post? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the market is certainly concerning, but the nice part about what we're doing is that our advisors and their clients, because of the strategy that we take, are not panicking. Again, we'll go back to that confidence. The strategy allows people to go through these kinds of market cycles with a lot of peace of mind, because they know that, as Steve said, the later assets that are going to be used later in retirement, they probably will go through at least 2 or 3 market cycles before they're being needed for income, and they're being monitored very closely. So, that kind of peace of mind, especially in today's environment, is extremely important. We actually found, since our platform is so visually engaging and engages the client in the creation of the plan, that our advisors were really having a lot of fun with their clients on virtual meetings. In fact, we had advisors telling us that they couldn't get their clients off the Zoom meeting because they were so engaged in testing out assumptions in the plan and things like that. So I think that's actually the new world. When you say the post-COVID world, I don't think we'll ever go back to that 100% in-office, face-to-face relationship. In fact, we have younger advisors who all of their clients are virtual, and they're all across the country. So it really does open up a new market for people when you don't have to be, 20, 30 mile radius with your clients. So I think that having an interactive, engaging technology really solidifies that kind of interaction over a webinar. And I think we need to move to that. We need to move away from the paper and pencil and, the in-person meeting where things are run in the back office, and really make them interactive. But also engaging in the aspect of education. So I know Steve does this very well he uses a whiteboard along with IncomeConductor, which is great. And he can educate while building the plan. So there's a lot of talk about financial wellness and a lot of financial wellness programs, and some of them have, great content. But there's a difference between sending people off to an external site to watch videos, or, have a gamification platform to realize goals, and actually engaging them within the context of their own plan. I kind of analogize it to, you can read books about making pottery. You can watch videos about making pottery, but until you sit down with that piece of clay and experience it, and really put your hands and your mind into it, you're not really going to learn. And that learning is not going to stay with you. So okay. That's what IncomeConductor does, and I think it really facilitates that educational component.
Okay, so Steve, let's talk pots, 2012 vintage versus 2022. What's similar or dissimilar? If Laura and I were to come to your office in 2012 as a client. What's similar about the experience in 2022, and what's different? Maybe you could just tell us, like, how's the tech changed the human interaction?
Well, I can tell you how it's changed for me. In 2012, you would have come into my office, which would have been a very traditional corporate office, and you would have sat down on the other side of the table, and I would have plopped down probably a 40-page report with all kinds of assumptions and math and graphs and charts and bar charts and circle charts and all of that. That's what we had to work with. And basically, when you're done going through that with them, and their eyes glaze, the eyes glaze over, and they look at you and they basically say, "Is this a good idea?" And I say, "Yes." And then they have to decide whether they trust me enough at that point to give me all their money. That does work about 60% of the time. If you're old enough or look old enough and have designations on your walls and all that. The difference now is they come in, I don't have an office. Well, I have an office, but I don't. My office is really an education center. I have a whiteboard. I have standing desks. I don't sit across from anybody anymore. We're sitting on the same side of the table now. And then we go through the process of building a plan for them visually. And when we're done, they understand their plan. And that's the difference. They understand the plan. It's transparent. They see, you just have to experience this. First of all, we set the stage, and I do what I call my mountain chart. And I say, you know what? Your financial life is a life of two journeys. First journey is saving the money and getting to the top of top of that mountain. And here's what you have to work with. The second journey is coming down the mountain, actually in the distribution phase where you're pulling money out of your assets. And that is actually a more hazardous time. And that's why you need me. You need a Sherpa to get down the mountain. I'm your Sherpa. And they get it. I have people who literally have laughed out loud when we're done or when they see what's happening. I've had people cry because they're so relieved to see that they actually can understand that they can retire now and have secure income. And it's done after one meeting sometimes, or two maybe. And then I have to do my part, and I have to, then there's more to it. There is complexity on my side, but there's simplicity on their side. Mm-hmm. And then I get paid to do the complex part, which I do, but that's all under the hood. And we've devised different tools and spreadsheets and stuff to help us do that. But ultimately, what they're seeing in their client reports every quarter is something they can understand and visually, and we can see every segment, what we're really adding here is another level of diversification. We all know about asset class diversification. What we're doing is what I call time structured diversification. We're diversifying your assets according to time when that's going to be needed. And each one of those segments has to be managed separately.
So am I hearing correctly that the message was always there? It's just you're telling it differently. So instead of putting down the 40 pages, which I'm sure had a lot of the same information to bring the client to the moment of tears or moment of relief, it's different?
No, it's different because, I tried to do this with Excel spreadsheets kind of just manually, the whole bucketing idea. And that was just a nightmare. No, you have to have a platform and you have to automate as much as possible. I mean, every segment, in terms of how it's doing, there's an automation aspect to it. Where if I have a segment that's outperforming our targets, because we set up targets, and, that's what the success of the plan. If a segment is outperforming or underperforming, I know that ahead of time. And if it's outperforming, that gives us certain options that, we can go into in more detail. But no, it's a different world. You have to have a platform like the kind of platform that IncomeConductor provides.
And I think Steve hit on a really important concept that I hope the industry as a whole is moving to. We're not saying that what Steve is doing is not complex. Retirement is extremely complex, much more so than accumulation. There are so many aspects of it, you guys know, because you're retirement experts as well. So a lot of these concepts like Social Security and Medicare and long-term care and life insurance and, guaranteed income through annuities and growth through investment portfolios, all of that sort of comes together with the client's individual goals and longevity, health conditions. All of this comes together in retirement. So it is very complex. It's not just a matter of, selling the client a product. It really is truly managing their plan with all of these moving components. But hopefully we're taking that complexity and simplifying it for the client. So they don't walk out of the office or away from a virtual meeting saying, I'm a pretty smart person. I have no idea what my financial advisor just told me. So we need to communicate very complex topics in very simple ways. And I think that good technology can help the advisor do that.
Yeah. Sheryl, I think I mentioned this to you in another conversation. Steve, I worked at an insurance company that saw the value of financial planning. And, the solution was, let's hire a bunch of people from American Express IDS, set up a financial planning organization. Now, step one was build a plan factory, right? Fill out form, ka-ching, the book lands. Now, $800 later, here it is. And, the KPIs at that point were, well, how many products did you sell per client? It sounds a little too transactional, probably for a lot of some people's taste, but how many products per client? What was the close ratio? If you were to look at your, KPIs as an advisor, has this sort of technology done for you? It sounds like, okay, you don't have office space, so you've actually probably reduced your operating expenses. How else has it changed? Like number of clients you can serve, the assets you're managing. How would you say the economics have changed as a result of a new platform like this?
I would say the first thing is client retention. There's two things. There's client that come to mind: client retention and close ratio. I mean, my closing ratio is, I'm not even going to tell you because you won't believe it. And my retention is, I think I've lost one client over the last 5 years. And that's probably somebody that should have never been using this to begin with, just for various reasons. So those two things, as you can imagine, are extremely important to the kind of business that we're in. So I don't worry about that so much. I can focus on doing a good job, and then kind of the fun part is staying in touch with my clients, and I hear all the stories. I know what's going on in their lives. My fence got blown over by a big wind the other night. I need to go to my surplus account. Can I have $10,000? Of course you can. We plan for this. So, that's the great part of this business is obviously the relationships with the clients and the fact that they're successful. You're making them successful. And we all want that.
Yeah, and I think our advisors are finding that this is giving them a whole new value proposition in their practices. I think the days of an advisor just taking a client's assets and, building portfolios and charging basis points on them are over. I think the new model of the advisor is really being that hub for the client and being the go-to person to ask for advice on all sorts of aspects in their life. They're not just their financial instruments, but, all of the aspects of their life that affect their finances, like home sales and living decisions, even introducing their advisor to the other professionals in their life, which is certainly a marketing opportunity for our advisors, bringing that relationship in with their CPA, their attorney, even their medical professionals, and sort of being that center point of information for their client. That certainly goes to retention and referrals. And again, it gives a new value proposition in a market that is demanding this type of service.
I totally agree with that. And the other aspect, Sheryl, I would add to this is people make decisions or things happen. We had a couple, this was I think about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And they were just starting to have grandkids, and they bought a condo. They wanted to buy a condo in Florida to get away and have the kids visit them down there sometimes. So really what we ended, and this came about very early in the conversation. And so what I was able to do, and I was working with another advisor who brought me in because of my specialty, is what we were able to do is we could model this scenario. Does this work? We know you have a successful retirement plan right now. What happens if we add this condo to the model? And they weren't extremely wealthy people. And what we found is that it didn't work because they wanted to keep a house locally to be close to their kids. And so we started thinking through this, and we said, you know what? That's probably going to be important for the next 10 years? And they said, well, yeah, that makes sense. I said, what if you rented? This was the other advisor's idea. I thought it was a great idea. What if we rented a house? And that worked. Well, we just helped them explore it, and it solved it. So, and we could model that. And that's really important to be able to do that, so we can see it's okay. This is doable. It becomes very practical. This is about quality of life for people.
So Steve, we've got this $100 million fund. I wish we're about to invest. We're about to invest in Sheryl so she can write. Her teams can write whatever code you tell them to do. What are the next problems that you need solved, or you think if you only had these set of features over the next couple of years, this would enable what for you? I mean, what's your wish list?
Yeah. Well, I do have a wish list, as Sheryl well knows. I would say the next level of planning is tax planning. Mm-hmm. And I know, Sheryl, I know your team's working on that, but Roth conversions, tax diversification. We can do that, but I can't do it inside the on the platform yet. But that I think is of some. I think that's of critical importance because that I think is the one risk that we can't really fully measure. We can project, but it's also something that I think is a bit scary because as the demographics change and we know what the trend is, an aging population and all the entitlement programs are going to get more and more expensive, and there's only one way to pay for that, and that's taxes. So I would say that would be one thing. Generational planning is another. I don't think that's not as high on my priority list, but those two things come to mind.
So Sheryl, talk to us a little bit about some of the enhancements that are on the horizon.
So without giving too much away,
what you can say.
Yeah, the way we look at it, there are two entities that inform where we want to take the software. And the first one is the feedback from our advisors. So we take that very seriously. We have a feedback mechanism where our advisors can say, hey, it would be nice if I could do this. It may turn into just a quick, quarterly release, or it could turn into a very large project that we're planning out, over the next 6 months to 12 months. So that's one entity. The other entity we look at is, where is society going? What are the impacts on the individual moving into retirement, where the advisor may not right now look at the need for that data, but we're looking at the need for that data for good planning. So those are the two aspects that inform our growth plan, our enhancement plans. So there is going to be coming very soon a very special way of incorporating tax analysis, not just optimization, but tax analysis with the ability to put constraints on it. Because oftentimes, if you just run, what's the most tax efficient liquidation order of a client's assets, it could be that it's operationally impossible. I ran a TAMP. I built and ran a TAMP, so I know what the constraints are around accounts and distributions and, the regulations. So we want to take that kind of, tax liquidation order concept and bring it into reality, and also apply, honestly, machine learning on it, because it's not just the tax piece. It's also, as Steve mentioned, the Roth conversion piece. And another big piece of this that he didn't mention is RMDs.
Yeah,
so
that I missed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what our advisors are finding is that a lot of people now did what they were told. They were told to max out their 401ks, right? So they're coming to retirement with almost 100% of money in IRAs. And when you don't have any non-qualified money to pay the taxes for those Roth conversions, and when you're getting into a situation where the RMDs are forcing you to take more money than you really need, thus higher taxes, there are other implications to that as well. It could throw you into a higher IRMA bracket. And so now your Social Security taxes, IRMA is really a tax. I mean, it's a tax on your Medicare benefits, so your Social Security benefits. So we really need to look at all of these components together and then be able to model them dynamically with the kind of constraints that clients may come to advisors with. They may say that there's a particular set of legacy stocks that they don't want to touch. They don't want it as part of their income stream. They may want to pass it on to the next generation. Or they may have a preferred way of saying, modeling that liquidation order. Many times, according to Phil, couples have come and said, hey, I don't want, the wife has said, I don't want to use up all of my IRA assets first. Why should I deplete my IRA accounts before my husband depletes his? So there are some, there's some personal preferences, and then there's the operational feasibility of that tax optimization, and all of those components need to be brought together. And we think that, AI and machine learning can help us do that.
Well, massively complex topic, and Steve, as you alluded to, it's a moving target at times, right? Like, will we see needs testing for Social Security? 10 years from now, I don't know, right? Just switch gears a little bit. We sponsored a climate conference, and Laura went to it in Massachusetts 2 weeks ago, I think, and so. Maybe not controversial, maybe controversial topic, depending on the audience you're speaking to. Where does climate fit into the retirement calculation?
I have not. That's a great question, but it's not one that I've encountered or given much thought to tell you the truth.
Yeah. I guess, like, is there I could see a climate box. First of all, does client believe or not believe in climate risk, right? Yes, no. First toggle. The second one, you look at some of the decisions, we're talking about tax decisions, right? One tax strategy is move from high tax state like where I'm in New York to low tax state in Florida. But wait a second, I'm going to go there and, where do I live? Steve, you talked about the risk of buying something. Well, if this property is going to be under 3 feet of water in 20 years, or probably the more probable risk is I can't get that thing insured and set storms hits, and now I'm having to figure out how to rebuild a house. So, Sheryl, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think there are lots of impacts that come from both climate change and obviously economic and governmental upheaval, political upheaval. So we've seen where the war in Ukraine and the issues around Russia have impacted inflation. The gas prices went up first, and then we started to see all of the trickle down effects of the energy price issues into manufacturing and distribution, and it all globally. I mean, we kind of concentrate on this in America as if it's a us problem. It's not. It's a we problem. It's a global problem. So I think from a retiree's perspective, inflation risk is going to be where that hits the hardest. And having a plan where, like Steve mentioned, if something happens and you need to draw more assets over a certain period of time for whatever reason, it could be a catastrophic event, or it could be just a long-term period of hyperinflation, you need data on which to make those decisions. And most financial planning tools are based on sort of a probability of success approach. So if you rerun that probability with a high inflationary assumption, your probability is going to go down. Well, what does that mean in dollars and cents? How much less should I be spending this coming year? And honestly, can I spend less? Or do I have non-discretionary expenses that are going up where I may need more income over this period than less? And I think those kinds of adjustments can easily be made on IncomeConductor with the resulting data that upon which a decision is made. It could be a decision that I need to meet my bills now. So I may not be able to leave that legacy. I may not be able to help my grandchildren through college, but I have the actual data and the dollar and cents impact of that, that inflationary assumption that I can work with, not a change in probability. I don't even think advisors understand changes in probability. I don't think they can explain it to a client in the way that a client can actually apply it to their life.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with what Sheryl just said. And I have many conversations because, parents, if they have children, parents are always parents, and they always want to take care of their kids. And many times I've had the conversation where I say, okay, here's your plan. And here's your legacy longevity account. That's the account that's the segment that's not assigned to any income stream. And it's what I call the surplus account. And so, they say, well, I've got one kid left that I want to send to college. And we run the model. We model. They say, all right, here's what you can do for your son or your daughter. Here's the impact. Mm-hmm. Your surplus account just went down from $250,000 to $150,000. It's going to cost your plan $100,000. That's the context in which they need to make the decision. And too often they're looking at it from a very limited perspective. they see it as a cash flow issue now. They're not seeing it as a projected impact on their plan over their lifetime, and that's what they need to see to make the right decision. And they said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, you know what? Your kid's 20 years old. He's going to have a lot more time to pay off loans if that's what we have to do. Or maybe they'll just forgive them. I don't know. But I mean, you just need to give the proper context for the decision to be made. And that's what IncomeConductor allows me to do for my clients. Many times.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Going through my mind, it's almost like I could see Monopoly pops up in my mind for some reason, where it's, if you land on this, then this will it's a really interesting way. And the modeling sounds very interesting to me. Getting at the heart of it, both of you have, these practices, these minds, this intellect, this knowledge, but I have to ask the question, Steve, you could have done 1,000,001 things, and here you are running this successful practice. What keeps you waking up every day and doing this type of work?
Success. I mean, ultimately, it's feeling good about what you do and having a successful practice, but I get to tap into everybody's success. And that means a lot to me. That's why I don't want to retire. I mean, my wife wants me to someday, but it's important work. And, so yeah, there's that part. And somebody needs to do this. More people need to do this. I mean, let's share the wealth, let's get the word out. I mean, there is a way to give people success on their two journeys, particularly the second, people need the Sherpa to help them down the mountain, because that's where most of the fatalities occur in real life mountain climbing. It's the same in the financial world, I think.
Yeah, Sheryl, your mountain. Like, what's the next? What's the peak, right, for what you're doing when you say, you know what, I got there?
Well, I don't know if that will ever happen, but it's been a really fun journey, just learning about all these things and being surrounded by experts like Steve and Phil, people who actually sit down and work with clients, and they're in the trenches, and I think what helps every day is hearing stories about their clients' happiness and, amazement that finally they're getting the plan that they've been looking for, and the confidence that gives them. Also, the fact that our advisors come back and say, I wish I had this 20 years ago. I've doubled my assets under management in less than 2 years. I'm just having a whole new experience. It was kind of, drudgery for a while. And now this has kind of rejuvenated me and my practice. So that helps me on a daily basis. And I keep learning from other people in the industry. I've been around in the industry, started out in the insurance area, went over to the investment side, worked with both the wealth and the retirement plan side. And, I keep looking for opportunities to bring those sides together, because when you work in retirement income, this is the final arc of somebody's financial experience, their lifetime. This is the last phase. So lots of people don't like to talk about it that way, but it truly is. And so we want to make sure in the industry that arc is uninterrupted. And right now we're siloed. The insurance and the investment side is siloed, where we should be looking at, especially in retirement, bringing the best of those both worlds together. Many advisors like Steve, they use insurance, they use annuities, they use investment portfolios in combination to reach those client goals, and that's the way it should be. And then the retirement plan side into the wealth side, those two folks should not be competing. over the client's assets. They should be working together to make sure it's a continuous, successful experience for the individual. So I'm hoping that, that message can get out more and more, and that people will start coming together and realizing that really the end state is the best possible financial life for the individual, and that we should all be, kumbayaing it rather than eating and really working towards that ultimate experience, because people will be more successful.
Well, excellent. Well, hey, thanks for joining. Steve, it was a pleasure to meet. Sounds like, your clients are very lucky to have you. Sheryl, great to see you. Laura, thanks. And we'll put links to Sheryl, your company, and Steve, your firm as well, if you'd like it. And thanks for the listeners. Join us again next week for another episode of the Reimagine Podcast. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.